Hashtag Trending would like to thank Meter for their support in bringing you this podcast. Meter delivers a complete networking stack, wired, wireless, and cellular in one integrated solution built for performance and scale. You can find them at meter.com/HTT. Amazon cuts another 16,000 corporate jobs as AI reshapes white-collar work. Why Alibaba's Quinn 3 is challenging the top U.S. foundation models. Linux plans for a future without Linus Torvalds. And Denmark's counterintuitive lesson on preparing students for a high-tech world. Welcome to Hashtag Trending. I'm your host, Jim Love. Let's get into it. Amazon is cutting 16,000 corporate jobs, its second major round of layoffs in just over 3 months. The e-commerce giant announced the cuts yesterday following roughly 14,000 layoffs back in October. In a memo to staff, Senior Vice President Beth Galletti said the reductions are meant to reduce layers, increase ownership, and remove bureaucracy, noting that several teams never completed their restructuring from the previous round. Now, what makes this particularly notable is the context. Yahoo Finance said, Amazon employs about 1.57 million people globally, but about 350,000 in corporate roles. So these cuts are thinning of the white-collar staff rather than the warehouse or delivery jobs. CEO Andy Jassy foreshadowed this direction last year, writing that the broader use of artificial intelligence would mean fewer people doing some of the jobs that are being done today, and more people doing other types of jobs. We'll get back to that in a second. Amazon says it will continue hiring in strategic areas even as it trims elsewhere, a pattern we're increasingly seeing across large tech firms. But we keep being told AI will eliminate some jobs and create new ones. In theory, that's how every major technology shift works. In practice, the first half is easier to point to, and the second half, especially in what might be a totally new wave of technology, that second part, the new jobs, could be strangely elusive. Until those answers get clearer, it's reasonable to be skeptical, not cynical, just evidence-driven. Alibaba's Quinn has become the first open-weight foundation model to surpass 200,000 derivative models on Hugging Face. Now, that number needs a little unpacking. These aren't 200,000 independent AI systems. They're fine-tuned derivatives, variations on models built by developers who took Quinn's base weights and adapted them for specific jobs like legal review, medical analysis, translation, and coding. The closest analogy to this is Linux. There's one core system surrounded by a vast ecosystem of specialized distributions. Quinn's Apache 2.0 license is what enables that. There are no royalties, no usage restrictions, and no requirement to ask permission. You download the weights, modify them, and deploy them wherever you want. And it appears that Quinn is still the champion, even amongst those 200,000 derivatives. That ecosystem milestone landed just as Alibaba released Quinn 3 Max Thinking. It's its new flagship variant with an explicit reasoning mode and what they're calling test time scaling. And this model is driving renewed attention because on key benchmarks, Quinn is keeping up with and sometimes exceeding the leading foundation models. On the MMLU, the massive multitask language understanding across 57 academic subjects, Quinn 3 Max Thinking reaches parity with closed system models like GPT 5.2 Thinking and Gemini 3 Pro. There's no runaway winner, but Quinn 3 just keeping up with these two new models is a story in itself. On coding tasks, the picture gets even more interesting. Claude 3.5 Sonnet still leads the human eval pass rates among commercial models, with GPT-4 class systems close behind. But Quinn's smaller 7 billion parameter variant has already surpassed GPT-4's historical baseline. And the Max Thinking version is now providing an integrated tool use aimed at agent-style coding workflows. The performance on humanity's last exam-style evaluations is nuanced. This is a next-generation benchmark to test how good advanced AI models really are at very difficult expert questions that cannot be solved simply by searching the web and finding the answer. In tool use benchmarks, where Quinn can actually use tool sets and even search not to find the answer, but to help derive the solution, Quinn 3 Max Thinking scores materially higher than both GPT 5.2 Thinking and Gemini 3 Pro. But when it's not allowed to use tools to solve the problems, Quinn's scores are respectable, but not in the top 10. And again, what we have to remember is this is open source, free to use and adapt, and for it to be able to hold its own, let alone exceed the big players, is huge. Because unlike the closed foundation models tied to a single vendor's platform, Quinn's Apache license lets you inspect the weights, change the code, run it from anywhere, from a laptop to a private data center, all of this without any vendor approval. And even the hosted model pricing is a huge saving, roughly half the price of GPT-4 class models. And if prices rise or terms change with an open source model, you have the option to simply self-host. And self-hosting is increasingly practical. Smaller Quinn 3 models will already run on consumer GPUs, mid-range versions fit on a single high-end workstation card, and even the largest mixture of expert variant becomes feasible with multi-GPU setups or aggressive quantization. And finally, Alibaba has removed another barrier: interoperability. Quinn's APIs mirror both OpenAI's and Anthropic's formats, so you can switch without rewriting an application, no lock-in, no stack rebuild. Now, it is developed in China and all that entails. But so far, on a limited use, I haven't detected any factual inaccuracies. I'm still in very early testing, and I've stayed in the arena of just pure tech. I haven't strayed into social or political or things like that. I'll be doing a story myself on model bias in the coming weeks, and maybe we'll see just how biased or accurate all the foundation models are. I'll keep you up to date. Across open source software, an uncomfortable reality is setting in. Many of the people who founded, sponsored, and personally carried critical projects are aging out. Some are retiring, some are slowing down, some, how can I put this gently, are reaching the human equivalent of end of life, which I guess is like end of life. But the software they built still runs the modern world. And that's why a recent move inside the Linux community matters. Linus Torvalds created Linux more than 3 decades ago, and he still plays a unique role. He doesn't write most of the code anymore. Thousands of developers do that. What Linus does is he acts as the final authority for the Linux kernel. He resolves disputes between maintainers, decides what code gets merged and what doesn't, and he signs off on every release. He's the human equivalent of the final checksum. If Linux suddenly didn't have Torvalds in that role, it wouldn't stop running. But the absence of a clearly defined decision path would matter. Linux is the underpinning of our cloud infrastructure, our smartphones, networking gear, and much of the internet. Uncertainty at the top would ripple outward quickly. And that's why it's kind of reassuring that even after more than 30 years, the Linux community has finally formally documented a contingency plan, something that was agreed to and written down in late 2024 through discussions among senior maintainers and on the Linux kernel mailing list, and that has recently surfaced. And the answer to this succession is classic Linux. Here's how it works. First, Linus's responsibilities don't transfer to a single replacement. Secondly, authority would shift to a small group of senior kernel maintainers. who already oversee major subsystems. Third, the existing review and escalation processes would remain unchanged, just without a single final arbiter. And finally, releases would continue under a shared sign-off rather than one person's approval. So, for those of you who are worried about it, no scramble, no power vacuum, no panic, just a shared responsibility using structures that already exist. And why this matters is simple. Linux is too important to be a single point of human failure. By formally acknowledging that reality and documenting how it would handle it, the project is showing a level of maturity that many open source efforts haven't yet reached. After decades of success, Linux is doing exactly what it teaches everybody else to do. Plan for failure, build redundancy, and make sure the system survives even when a critical component fails. Maybe it's just one of those things, but suddenly, do you see Denmark in the news everywhere? This time, it wasn't about taking over Greenland or anything like that. It was from a piece in Upworth that talked about how Denmark wants to better prepare students for a highly connected, technology-driven world. And the answer it landed on is counterintuitive. Give them less access to technology in the classroom. This didn't come out of nowhere. Danish education officials have been reviewing years of learning data, and the conclusion has been uncomfortable. Widespread laptop and tablet use didn't deliver better reading comprehension, deeper understanding, or, God forbid, stronger critical thinking. In some cases, scores stagnated or even declined, even as screen time increased. That evidence is what's driving a Danish return to textbooks, handwriting, and more structured instruction, especially for younger students. What Denmark is reacting to is measurable. International assessments like the Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA, an international study done every 3 years since 2000, has shown reading performance slipping across many developed countries over the past decade, including digitally advanced ones. So Denmark's response is to rebuild foundational skills first, introduce technology deliberately rather than assuming screens automatically equal readiness for a digital future. And they've been getting some strong results, not just in increased attention span, but also in related areas like enjoyment of reading and even improved self-esteem. So the question would be, why aren't we seeing the same response in the United States or Canada? Part of that answer is expectations. Faced with declining scores, systems here have adjusted the benchmarks, reweighted assessments, and shifted how success is measured. It's like that old joke, how do you become prouder of me? Lower your expectations. But there are signs that we're getting the message. Canada has seen phone bans and renewed focus on literacy. In the US, some districts are pulling back on devices, but these are cautious, fragmented steps, not a wholesale rethink of digital-first education. Denmark is taking a clearer stance. In a complex world, the advantage may not be bigger systems or more powerful technology. It could be sharper thinking, and that might sometimes start by knowing when to unplug. Of course, it's a tiny country, a small population. They can't match the financial or the military strength of bigger countries. But you have to ask yourself, in the world we're going to see, will these things really matter as much as intelligence and critical thinking? We might find out. Or we can continue to lower our expectations. And that's our show. Once again, we'd like to thank Meter for their support in bringing you this podcast. Meter delivers full-stack networking infrastructure, wired, wireless, and cellular to leading enterprises. Working with their partners, Meter designs, deploys, and manages everything required to get performant, reliable, and secure connectivity in a space. They design the hardware, the firmware, build the software, manage deployments, and run support. It's a single integrated solution that scales from branch offices, warehouses, and large campuses all the way to data centers. Book a demo at meter.com/HTT. That's meter.com/HTT. I'm your host, Jim Love. Have a thrilling Thursday.